Bone-chilling cold can turn a living, breathing human being into a stiff, frozen statue in just a matter of hours. That was the exact death my mother-in-law and the husband I shared a bed with had custom designed for me. Their goal? To ruthlessly steal my multi-million-dollar commercial cold storage seafood empire and clear the path to bring a wealthy heiress into my home. But they severely underestimated me. They locked the heavy door of the industrial freezer, trapping me inside, completely unaware that I had personally rigged the ventilation shaft to escape. And to return the favor, I violently dragged her precious, spoiled daughter and threw her into that exact same icy grave. The next morning, when the freezer door was opened, revealing her darling daughter turned into a solid block of ice, my mother-in-law let out a harrowing, blood-curdling scream, bit her own tongue, and died right on the spot. As for my despicable husband, he is currently paying the price for his sheer stupidity and cruelty with a life sentence within 4 cold concrete prison walls. In this game of chess, not only did I win, but I forced them to pay with their blood and their lives. It all started on a night in mid-May, a month when the weather in Seattle was unseasonably muggy and suffocating. The 3-story luxury estate on Mercer Island, which I had bought with my own blood, sweat, and tears before we even got married, was now harboring a pack of starving wolves. For 5 years of marriage, I had spent my youth and every dime I saved from my days of having absolutely nothing to build Sterling Cold Chain Logistics, the largest frozen seafood distributor in the Pacific Northwest. My husband, Preston, went from being a lowly regional sales rep to vice president, entirely because I pulled strings and promoted him to save his pride. I moved his mother, Martha, and his younger sister, Chloe, from their rural, dead-end town in Idaho into my home, providing them with a life of luxury they couldn't have even dreamt of. I foolishly thought my forgiveness and sacrifices would earn me a peaceful home. I was wrong, idiotically wrong. That night, I had told Preston I was flying to Anchorage, Alaska, for a 3-day business trip to inspect our wild-caught sourcing. But because my supplier suddenly postponed, I turned my car around from SeaTac Airport and came home early. The estate was completely dark. I was about to turn on the living room lights when a voice coming from the crack in Preston's home office door stopped my hand in its tracks. "You need to end this once and for all, Preston. We can't drag this out anymore." Jessica just called me. She said next month she's wiring $50 million from her offshore trust fund to the States so you two can start a new company. But her condition is that you have to completely eliminate Vic. She doesn't want the stigma of being the other woman, and she definitely doesn't want to look at your old hag of a wife for another day. Mom, keep your voice down. I know. But Vic is sharp. She's got the warehouse deeds and bank accounts locked down tight. I've tried to sweet-talk her into transferring the company shares to a joint account so many times, but she won't budge. If we divorce, her prenuptial assets are untouchable. How am I supposed to get a dime? If I walk away empty-handed, Jessica will look down on me. Who said anything about a divorce? Divorcing to split assets is a game for stupid women. If we want to take it all, there is only one way. If she dies, you are her legal husband and the primary heir. All of those cold storage warehouses, this entire Mercer Island estate, it will all be yours. Then you can openly marry Jessica. Money making money. Won't you be on top of the world? My entire body froze. The blood in my veins felt like it had been drained. I stood rooted to the hardwood floor in the hallway, my ears ringing, my hands clenched into fists so tightly that my manicured nails dug into my palms, drawing blood. Murder me. The mother-in-law who fawned over me and played the perfect homemaker every day. The husband who held me in his sleep every night. They were plotting to murder me to steal my wealth. But Mom, murder means prison. The cops these days are high-tech. One slip-up and I'm getting lethal injection. I can't take that risk. You idiot. Who said you have to use a gun or a knife to kill her? We run a frozen seafood logistics company. What's the temperature of our commercial freezers? -4 degrees Fahrenheit? Freezer Unit 3 down by the port of Tacoma has been having issues with its internal alarm system lately, hasn't it? Just find an excuse to lure her down there to check on the inventory late at night. Once she steps inside, you slam the heavy insulated steel door shut and throw the external mechanical deadbolt. At that temperature, it only takes 3 or 4 hours for the heart to stop and the blood to freeze solid. The next morning when she's found, the medical examiner will just rule it a tragic workplace accident, a jammed door, asphyxiation, and hypothermia. No wounds, no signs of a struggle. Who could possibly convict you? Mom, you've thought this through perfectly, If I didn't think it through, were we supposed to leech off that iron-faced bitch for the rest of our lives? Look at your sister Chloe. Every month, she has to hold her hand out and beg for a few measly bucks just to go shopping. I've been sick of Vic's attitude for years. Just do as I say. Once she's dead, everything is ours. My chest tightened, a bitter, suffocating feeling rising to my throat. A fire of sheer rage began to ignite, obliterating any trace of weakness. I didn't cry. Tears were the most useless thing right now. 10 years of surviving the cutthroat corporate world meant I had dealt with thousands of ruthless hustlers, but I never expected the real monsters wearing human skin to be living under my own roof. They wanted me to turn to stone in a freezer. Fine. I will show them what the true cruelty of ice really feels like. I crept backward on my tiptoes, silently slipping out the front door without making a single sound. I drove out of the gated community, pulled over on an empty, dark street, and rested my head on the steering wheel. The psychological shock made me tremble. But almost instantly, the razor-sharp logic of a seasoned CEO pulled me back to reality. I grabbed my phone and called Arthur Vance, my chief legal counsel, and a trusted mentor who had been with me since my startup days. Right then and there, in the dead of night, a master plan of defense and counterattack was drawn up. If they wanted to use Freezer Unit 3 as my tomb, I would turn it into a mass grave for their entire bloodline. The next morning, I dragged my designer suitcase through the front door, acting exhausted, as if I had just caught the earliest red-eye back from Anchorage due to the canceled meetings. The moment she saw me, Martha rushed over, a fake, sickening smile plastered on her wrinkled face. "Oh my sweet daughter-in-law is home. I thought you were gone for 3 days? I was just about to head to Pike Place Market to buy some fresh Maine lobster to make bisque for you. You travel so much you look so pale and exhausted." I set my Hermes bag down on the armchair and gave a faint smile, my eyes sweeping over the wrinkled face, trying so desperately to look maternal. "The supplier had an emergency and canceled at the last minute, Mom. I came straight back to handle some corporate issues. You don't need to spend all that money on fancy dinners. I'm quite tired of seafood lately anyway." From the top of the stairs, Preston walked down. He was wearing a crisp, ironed white dress shirt, his hair styled immaculately with pomade, looking every bit the dignified vice president. He walked over, wrapping his arm around my waist, his voice dripping with honey. "You work too hard, honey. If you keep pushing yourself like this, you'll burn out. Let me handle the warehousing, take a few days off, go to the spa, go shopping at the Bravern, I'll drive you." I suppressed the violent nausea churning in my stomach, gently removing his hand from my waist. "We're at a critical point at the company, Preston. I can't take time off. Those cold storage units are taking in a massive multi-million-dollar shipment of Norwegian salmon right now. If I don't personally oversee it, I won't sleep. Especially Freezer Unit 3 down in Tacoma. The reports say the thermal sensors are glitching. You're the VP. Why haven't you sent the tech team down to fix it? If we lose that inventory, can you shoulder the cost?" I purposefully mentioned Freezer 3. Instantly, I saw the muscles in Preston's and Martha's faces twitch. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second, a sinister gleam flashing between them. They thought I was willingly walking into their trap. "Ah, yes. I already have people looking into it. Maintenance said they're waiting on a replacement part from the manufacturer. It's not too serious. Babe, the temperature is still holding, but if you're worried, you and I can drive down there tonight to inspect it together. It's too busy with the forklift crews during the day. It's hard to check the insulation seals then." "He's right, business comes first," Martha chimed in, playing the loving mother. "But make sure you bundle up. That warehouse is freezing. Preston, make sure you bring a heavy parka for your wife. Don't let her catch a cold." Looking at my mother-in-law playing her part, I gave a slight nod. "Okay, let's schedule a trip down there tonight. Better to get it sorted so we have peace of mind." I threw them a bone, and the starving dogs immediately snapped it up without a hint of suspicion. They were secretly celebrating, believing I had just dug my own grave. But what they didn't know was that before I even stepped foot in the house that morning, I had secretly dispatched my most trusted elite technical crew to Freezer Unit 3. I paid them an exorbitant amount of cash to do a highly classified job. Remove the heavy steel security grate covering the massive ventilation duct at the back of the freezer, install a mechanical quick-release latch on the inside, and completely camouflage it to look untouched. That vent was just wide enough for a human to crawl through. The game had just begun. They wanted to use the -4 degrees Fahrenheit cold to end my life. I was going to use that exact same cold to freeze their ambition, freeze their greed, and freeze the lives of those who dared to betray me. Dinner that evening took place in an atmosphere that, to any outsider, would look sickeningly perfect, a facade of warmth and happiness meticulously staged by the mother and son. On the solid Italian oak dining table I had personally picked out, expensive dishes were laid out. The smell of lobster bisque and garlic butter roasted shrimp filled the air. "Vic, eat up. You've been traveling so much, you must be skipping meals. You look so pale, it breaks my heart. Here, I simmered this bisque all afternoon, it's highly nutritious. You have to finish it to make me happy." I looked at the steaming bowl of soup pushed in front of me, a wave of disgust catching in my throat. This woman, who just yesterday afternoon was plotting to push me to a frozen death, was now playing the benevolent mother-in-law. The depravity of the human soul truly had no bottom. "Thank you, Mom. You and Preston eat too. Work has been so chaotic lately, I'm always leaving early and coming home late, neglecting the house. I feel terrible making you work so hard." "Don't say that. You are the financial pillar of this family. You handle the big business out in the world, Mom and I handle the home front." "But Vic," Preston put down his silverware, looking at me with damp, sincere eyes that, had I not heard them yesterday, might have brought me to tears of gratitude. He reached across the table, grabbing my hand, his fingers gently caressing my skin. "I see you working yourself to the bone, and it kills me. How can you carry this massive workload alone? How about this, honey? You hand over the operational control and the master access codes for the suburban warehouses to me. I will personally go down there, oversee the inventory, and manage the crews for you. You just sit at the downtown corporate office and handle the contract negotiations. Why do you have a husband if you insist on carrying the world on your shoulders? We're husband and wife, our assets are shared, our work is shared. I want to share your burden." I gently pulled my hand back, picking up my spoon to stir the bisque. Their motive was crystal clear. He wanted absolute control of the cold storage units, particularly Unit 3, so he could easily manipulate the security cameras and thermal sensors before locking me inside. They were afraid that if I kept absolute control, their murder plot would be exposed. You make a good point. I have felt my health declining lately. Headaches, insomnia. Maybe I should let go of some control and rest. Starting tomorrow, you take over the suburban warehouse chain. Tomorrow morning, I'll go into the HR and IT departments and officially transfer all master keys, security codes, and operational authority to you. Oh my lord, isn't that wonderful? Martha clapped her hands. A harmonious marriage, pulling together to conquer the world. Preston is a man, he has the stamina, he can be on the front lines. You just hand it all over to him, stay home, rest, get your nails done. A woman should know how to enjoy life. Thank you, my beautiful wife. I promise I'll manage it perfectly so you won't have to worry about a single thing ever again. Looking at the undeniable triumph radiating from their faces, I merely offered a soft smile, a cold smile that stretched all the way to the depths of my eyes. You want control of the warehouses? Fine, I'll give it to you. But what they didn't know was that before I handed over the IT security matrix, I had my techs establish a hidden shadow network. Every single piece of CCTV footage, every thermal reading at the warehouses, was now live streaming to a heavily encrypted private server located in Arthur Vance's law firm. The next morning, I kept my promise and signed a corporate power of attorney granting Preston operational control over the warehouses. He held the document, stamped with the company's corporate seal, walking on air as if he had just conquered half the globe. He thought he had grasped half my empire. But the moment he left the corporate tower, I immediately called in a team of elite private investigators and cybersecurity experts I had retained for a six-figure sum. Over the next 3 days, while Preston was busy taking over the warehouses and assuming I was resting at home, the entire Mercer Island estate and his company-leased Mercedes-Benz were fully bugged with microscopic cameras and audio transmitters. From the living room to his home office, right down to the dashboard of his car. I needed ironclad evidence not just to throw them in a federal penitentiary, but to completely obliterate their reputations and their futures. On the third night, after the surveillance grid was fully operational, I sat in a secret luxury condo I had quietly purchased in downtown Seattle the month prior. I opened my laptop, plugged in my headphones, and began harvesting the bitter fruits of my 10-year marriage. Hey Jess, it's me. It's done, babe. My old hag of a wife just handed over full operational control of the warehouses to me. Really? You better not be lying to me, Preston. Let me tell you, my patience is wearing thin. I refuse to have this baby in my belly born without a legitimate wealthy father. Martha promised me it would be done this month. Why is that iron-faced bitch still breathing? Just calm down, baby. Big moves take time. I've secured Unit 3. This weekend, I'm going to use a faulty cooling system as an excuse to lure her down there in the middle of the night. Mom and I have it set up perfectly. Just one slammed door, and by tomorrow morning, you will officially be the lady of a multi-million-dollar empire. You better keep your word. My $50 million trust is ready to be wired from my offshore accounts. As soon as you have her death certificate, I'll authorize the transfer so we can throw the wedding of the century. I want it at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. You owe me for giving you my youth. Don't worry, my love. Everything I have is yours. Just wait a few more days and I'll make you the happiest woman in Seattle. I ripped my headphones off and slammed them onto the desk. A violent wave of fury flared up, threatening to incinerate my logic. So, the mistress named Jessica was pregnant. They didn't just want to steal my hard-earned assets. They were fantasizing about a lavish fairy tale wedding built on my corpse. This Jessica had dangled a $50 million carrot, completely blinding Preston and his mother, making them willingly shed their humanity to become cowardly murderers. But one thing made me laugh out loud. A mysterious woman claiming to be a trust fund heiress promising to wire $50 million from overseas to fund a startup. Was it really that simple? Having spent years in the ruthless corporate world, the stench of this scam was far too familiar. I picked up my phone and called Arthur. Arthur, I need your PI team to immediately run a full, deep-dive background check and trace the financial origins of a woman named Jessica Lawson, currently sleeping with Preston. I want everything: her real address, bank accounts, credit history, criminal records. I need her full dossier on my desk by tomorrow morning. Hanging up, I stared at the laptop screen showing Preston's face via the hidden dashcam in his Mercedes. He was smiling smugly, humming a trashy pop love song. He was living in an emperor's dream. Keep smiling, Preston. Laugh it up. Because tomorrow, I am going to show you that crossing Victoria Sterling is the most brutal death sentence you could ever sign for yourself. Saturday morning. The sky was crystal clear without a cloud, but my mood was thick with cold, calculated intent. Following the GPS tracker on Preston's Mercedes, I saw he was heading toward the Bravern, the ultra-luxury shopping center in Bellevue. Through the audio feed, I knew he was taking his mistress, Jessica, shopping for designer goods to prepare for their dream wedding. I put on a sharp, tailored burgundy Dior dress, slipped into a pair of Christian Louboutin stilettos, and applied a deep, authoritative crimson lipstick. I wasn't going there to throw a jealous fit or claw her eyes out like a hysterical housewife. I was going to admire the true faces of the people demanding my life and to deliver a psychological blow that would throw them into absolute panic. When I walked into the high-end leather goods section of the Dior boutique, I spotted them instantly. Preston was standing there subserviently holding shopping bags, while Jessica was twisting and turning in front of a mirror with a diamond-encrusted handbag. She was wearing tight clothes, purposefully pushing out a slightly rounded belly, draped in sparkling jewelry that at a single glance I knew were high-tier fakes. The aura of true wealth doesn't come from covering yourself in counterfeit logos, it comes from posture. Sadly, she merely reeked of a cheap gold digger. Preston, this bag is gorgeous. It's not even $35,000. I'm getting this one. I need it for the gala dinners and board meetings once my $50 million drops. It fits my status. $35,000? I mean, it's beautiful. But my liquid cash is a bit tied up in the warehouse logistics right now. Why don't you put it on your card for now? And once the business is finalized next week, I'll pay you back double? Are you serious right now? My money is locked in an offshore trust. There are protocols for disbursement. You're crying over 30 grand for a gift for your future wife? You call yourself a man who can take care of me and our baby? Fine. If you won't buy it, I don't want it. Seeing Jessica throw a tantrum and turn away, Preston panicked and grabbed her arm. Gritting his teeth, he pulled a Platinum American Express card from his wallet. A supplementary corporate card. I had issued him solely for entertaining business clients. Okay, baby. Don't be mad. I'll buy it. Whatever you want, you get. I couldn't hold back anymore. The sharp clicking of my stiletto heels echoed rhythmically against the marble floor, cold and sharp. I slowly walked up right behind them, crossed my arms, and spoke in a chilling, perfectly enunciated voice. Swiping the card is the easy part, but did you bother to check if that supplementary card has a single cent left on its limit for you to swipe, Mr. Vice President? Hearing my voice, both Preston and Jessica jumped out of their skin and whipped around. Preston's face instantly drained from a healthy pink to a sickly, ghostly white. All the blood left his face. He dropped the Amex card onto the floor, his lips trembling, unable to form words. Vic. Vic? Why? Why are you here? You said you were at the board of directors meeting today. I stepped forward, elegantly picking up the credit card from the floor, dusting off invisible dirt, and smiled directly into Jessica's face. The meeting ended early. I thought I'd do some shopping to relax. I didn't expect to witness such a generous display from my husband. Hello. You must be the $50 million business partner my husband and mother-in-law speak so highly of? Jessica looked momentarily flustered at being caught red-handed, but the shameless nature of a homewrecker quickly took over. She lifted her chin, flipping her curled hair, and looked at me with disdain. Oh, hi. You're Preston's wife? Heard a lot about you. You're pretty sharp, I'll give you that, but when a woman is too rigid, men get bored. It's natural. You should know your place and just let him go. We're having a baby together. What's the point of clinging to a piece of paper? I laughed out loud. A hearty, deeply contemptuous laugh. I turned to look at Preston, who was standing there shrinking, sweating profusely, not daring to utter a single syllable to defend his mistress or explain himself to his wife. Let him go? You overestimate this man. You think he's a CEO? A millionaire? Let me tell you a harsh truth, sweetie. The tailored suit he's wearing, the Mercedes he's driving, even that credit card he was about to use to buy you that bag. It is all my money. From the personal accounts of Victoria Sterling, and as of 8:00 a.m. this morning, I have canceled every supplementary card and frozen every single one of his personal spending accounts. Vic, what are you saying? You canceled my cards? Are you crazy? How am I supposed to entertain clients? How am I supposed to do business? I stepped in close to Preston, my eyes as sharp as razors, emphasizing every word. Entertain clients? At a Dior boutique with a homewrecker? You think I'm an idiot? Listen to me clearly, Preston. From this second on, you do not have the right to touch a single penny of my assets. And you. Jessica? I turned to the now pale mistress, my tone dripping with absolute sarcasm. You say you have $50 million? You want him to eliminate me to marry you? You think just because you have a bun in the oven you can step through the doors of high society? Let's see if you still cling to him and demand your dream wedding when he's thrown out onto the street with empty pockets. Keep your fake designer bag. It suits you perfectly. With that, I snapped the platinum card in half right in front of them, threw the pieces at Preston's feet, turned proudly on my heel, and walked away. Behind me, Jessica started screaming and cursing at Preston for humiliating her in front of the luxury sales associates, while Preston desperately tried to apologize and explain. The pathetic scene was nothing more than a cheap comedy. Walking out of the mall, I immediately called Arthur Vance and my CFO. That encounter wasn't just an impulsive outburst. It was a calculated move to shake the tree. I wanted Preston to know I had him by the throat. I wanted him to panic, because when a coward panics, he accelerates his desperate, deadly plans. He would bring me to Freezer Unit 3 very soon, but before that day came, I had one incredibly important task left, to legally hollow out my entire empire and funnel away the assets, so that no matter what they did, all they would inherit was a rotting, empty shell. That afternoon, at Arthur Vance's law firm, a flurry of legal documents was drafted at lightning speed. My network of 15 commercial cold storage facilities was technically registered under the corporate umbrella of Sterling Cold Chain Logistics Incorporated. Preston was the VP, but I was the founder holding 95% of the equity. A few days prior, I had quietly incorporated a holding company in the Cayman Islands under the name of a highly trusted proxy. I signed the executive orders transferring all fixed assets, including heavy machinery, industrial refrigeration systems, and the land leases of all 15 facilities over to the offshore holding company as long-term capital investments. Legally speaking, the U.S. entity of Sterling Cold Chain was now just a hollow shell carrying massive accounts payable and looming bank loans nearing maturity. But I didn't stop there. Tens of millions of dollars in liquid cash from my personal accounts were instantly converted into U.S. Treasury bonds and transferred into irrevocable trusts that could not be touched by anyone but me. Even if I died, A fail-safe clause dictated that those funds would automatically be donated to children's orphanages, completely bypassing the thieving hands of the Hayes family. Preston, in his sheer stupidity, and his greedy mother, had absolutely no idea how to read a corporate financial statement. They only saw the massive fleet of semi-trucks moving inventory, and they saw the daily gross revenue hitting the accounts. They had no idea I had completely gutted the core of the tree they were trying to steal. That evening, I returned home. The atmosphere in the mansion was suffocatingly tense. Martha was sitting rigidly on the sofa, her face radiating murderous intent. Seeing me walk in, she slammed her teacup onto the coffee table. "You have some nerve. What kind of wife publicly humiliates her husband in a crowded mall? Preston is a man, he has needs, he might stray a little, but you are supposed to protect his dignity. Instead, you cut his cards and freeze his accounts? Are you staging a rebellion in this house?" I looked at her, my gaze as cold as ice. "A man straying is normal, Mom?" So, a mother, encouraging her son to have an affair, and then bringing a pregnant homewrecker into the house to try and steal her daughter-in-law's assets. Is that just normal tradition for the Hayes family? From the second floor, Preston charged down the stairs. He hadn't even changed out of his clothes, looking completely unhinged. He lunged forward, raising his hand to slap me, but I swiftly caught his wrist and violently shoved him back. "Shut your mouth," he screamed. "Don't push your luck. I'm telling you, you humiliated me in front of Jessica, and I won't let this go. If you're so smart, let's just get a divorce. Split the assets 50-50, and I'll leave with her." I smiled, a smile full of pure defiance. "Divorce and split the assets? You must be daydreaming, Preston. You think this company belongs to you? If you want to split, go to court and take half of the massive corporate bank debt we are currently carrying. I don't have the energy to argue with you people." I walked right past them, heading straight up the stairs. I knew my insults tonight were the straw that broke the camel's back. They wouldn't be able to wait any longer. Hatred and greed had completely blinded their logic. As soon as I entered my bedroom, the earpiece connected to the hidden living room mics transmitted their voices. "Preston, we can't wait anymore. This bitch knows everything. If she blows this up and pulls the capital, we'll be out on the streets. Tomorrow night, no matter what it takes, you have to lure her down to freezer 3. I already told Chloe to get everything prepped. We have to kill her. If she dies, the assets are ours." "I know, Mom. Did you tell Chloe to unplug the external security cameras at the warehouse? It's all done. Tomorrow night, that freezer will be her tomb." I took out the earpiece, standing in front of the mirror, a chilling smile spreading across my face. The script was finalized. The hour of execution was set. Now, let's see who exactly would be the one lying in that frozen coffin tomorrow. The game of life and death officially commenced. The next day passed in an eerie, terrifying silence. It was the brutal calm before the storm. I went to work, signed contracts, drank my black coffee without sugar every morning in my corner office on the top floor of the corporate tower. Looking down at the bustling traffic of downtown Seattle, I knew that tonight, the parasites living off my sweat and blood would finally make their move to execute me. Throughout the day, via the surveillance grid, I watched the Hayes family's every move. They were meticulously prepared. Preston intentionally gave the entire night shift crew at Unit 3 the night off, claiming there was going to be a facility-wide electrical grid maintenance test. Chloe, the sister-in-law I had been feeding and sheltering for years, was assigned to drive a small company box truck and park it in the blind spot behind the warehouse. Her job was to act as the lookout and cut the main breaker if anything went wrong. Martha stayed home, rehearsing a theatrical, tear-jerking speech to perform for the Seattle police and the local news the next morning. Everything was programmed like a perfect Hollywood thriller. The only tragedy for them was that the true director of this play was me. At exactly 8:00 p.m., just as I pulled my SUV into the mansion's garage, the phone in my purse rang. The screen flashed Preston's name. I smirked, took a deep breath, adjusted my facial expression, and answered. "Vic, are you home yet? We have a massive disaster. Baby, I'm losing my mind." Preston's voice blasted through the phone, frantic, panicked, accompanied by heavy panting sounding exactly like a man standing on a burning bridge. If I hadn't known his plot beforehand, I absolutely would have been fooled by his fake hysteria. I deliberately kept my voice calm, mixing in the sharp irritation of a CEO hearing bad news. "What are you panicking about?" I just walked through the door. Is there an issue with the inventory? It's Freezer 3 down in Tacoma, honey. I was checking the central logistics terminal, and the temperature in there just randomly spiked to 41 degrees. The local alarm system is completely offline. The $1 million shipment of wild Alaskan king crab and king salmon we brought in this afternoon is sitting in there. If we don't drop the temperature right now, by tomorrow morning it will all be spoiled. The company will go bankrupt, Vic. I walked into the living room. Martha was sitting on the sofa. As soon as she saw me on the phone, she shot up and ran over. Her face was scrunched up in exaggerated anxiety, her hands wringing her shirt, playing the role of the distressed mother perfectly. Good Lord, what is it, Vic? What is Preston saying about spoiled inventory? $1 million? Oh my God, what are we going to do? You two need to fix this right now. I glanced at her, my cold eyes sweeping over her faux panicked face. I pressed the phone closer to my ear, responding to Preston in a sharp, commanding tone. Where are the maintenance techs? You are the VP of Logistics. An emergency happens and you don't dispatch a crew. You call me to complain? I called them, but they all went out of town for a union buddy's wedding. Nobody is in the city. I'm driving straight to Unit 3 right now. But Vic, the master passcode to the emergency override panel in that specific warehouse is only accessible by you. Even if I get there, I can't open the breaker box to reset the compressors. Please, you have to drive down here and help me. Just save this inventory, and I swear I'll make it up to you later. I'm begging you. I remained silent for a few seconds, intentionally creating a pause to make them think I was hesitating. Their calculation was brilliant, using the highest level security override which only I possessed as the ultimate leverage to force my physical presence at the scene. It was a perfectly logical excuse that couldn't be refused. Vic, please hurry, Martha pleaded. $1 million. That's your hard-earned money. Don't be mad at him right now. Just go down there, unlock the panel so Preston can fix it, and come straight back. I'll keep a pot of hot soup waiting for you both. Hurry, dear, every minute is money down the drain. I hung up the phone, looking straight into Martha's eyes. All right, Mom. Leave the light on for me. I'll be back shortly. Don't go to sleep too early tonight. You never know what surprises might happen. Martha flinched slightly at my cryptically loaded words, but her greed and imminent triumph immediately overpowered her unease. I turned and walked out the door. The smile vanished from my lips. My dear mother-in-law, stay awake tonight and wait. Wait to receive the most brutal sentence you have personally orchestrated. I drove my SUV into the pitch-black night. The highway out toward Tacoma was desolate, with only the dark silhouettes of towering pine trees flashing past the windows. A cold drizzle began to fall, the icy rain pelting the windshield. Freezer Unit 3 was located in an isolated industrial park, surrounded by empty lots overgrown with tall, wet weeds. This was exactly why I chose this location to store high-value cargo for its security and isolation. I never expected it to be chosen as my grave. My car pulled up to the warehouse. The entire facility was pitch black, illuminated only by a single flickering, high-pressure sodium street lamp casting a sickly yellow glow over the massive concrete loading dock. Preston's Mercedes was already parked there. He was pacing back and forth nervously in front of the colossal insulated steel roll-up door. Seeing my headlights, he rushed over, opening my car door himself. "You're here! Hurry!" I can hear the compressors inside making a weird hissing noise. I think the Freon leaked out. Go inside and punch the code for the emergency panel. I'm going to run around back and check the exterior thermal pipes to see if there's a rupture. I stepped out of the car. The night wind whipped against my face, freezing cold. I was wearing a long wool trench coat, but hidden beneath it was a highly specialized, extreme weather thermal suit designed to withstand -40 degrees Fahrenheit, which I had carefully put on before leaving the house. I looked at Preston at this man desperately trying to play the role of the devoted husband worried about our assets. You just stay right here. Once I unlock the panel, I'll inspect it myself. It's too dark out back, you'll just trip. Stand guard at the door. No, I have to check the pressure release valve in the back. If it's jammed, resetting the system won't do anything. Just go inside. I'll run back there and be right back. Hurry, Vic, the temperature is climbing fast. With that, he grabbed a flashlight and sprinted toward the blind spot of the warehouse. I stood alone in front of the massive, foot-thick insulated steel door. The white industrial paint reflected the dim light. This door was engineered for deep freeze storage, designed to lock in -4 degrees Fahrenheit. Once this door closed, and the external mechanical deadbolt was thrown, the inside would become a hermetically sealed ice tomb. No sound would escape. No cell phone signal could penetrate the industrial insulation. I took out my keycard and swiped it at the terminal. A sharp beep echoed, and the massive steel door slowly slid open. Instantly, a blast of sub-zero air hit me, the freezing vapor billowing out into the humid night air like thick white smoke, reaching out like ghost hands inviting me in. I took a deep breath and calmly stepped into the absolute darkness of the warehouse. The moment my heel crossed the threshold, a massive crash erupted behind me. Slam! The incredibly heavy steel door was violently shoved shut. The thick steel deadbolt violently clicked into place with a deafening metallic clack. I stood in the pitch black, surrounded by flesh-cutting cold. The play had reached its climax. The murderer had revealed himself. I stood perfectly still. I didn't scream. I didn't pound on the door. Through the thick, insulated door, I could still hear the muffled, distorted sounds echoing from the outside. It was laughter. The sick, triumphant, psychopathic laughter of the man I had called my husband for a decade. Goodbye, my lovely wife. Next life, try not to be so damn smart. When a woman gets too ambitious and controls her husband, there's only one way out. You just sit in there and count down the clock. 3 hours from now, your blood will turn to ice. Tomorrow morning, I'll be taking over this empire on your behalf. Rest in peace, you iron-faced bitch. His words echoed, bouncing off the insulated walls, colder than the sub-zero temperature currently consuming the room. So, these were his final parting words to me. The cowardice and cruelty of this man had reached a realm that words could no longer describe. I turned my back to the steel door. The temperature inside was exactly -4 degrees Fahrenheit. They hadn't shut down the cooling system like he lied about. In fact, they had overridden the compressors to run at maximum capacity. The freezing air rose from the iced-over concrete floor, seeping through my pants, biting at my bones. The moisture on my eyelashes began to freeze instantly. My breath turned into thick plumes of white smoke, crystallizing in the air. If an ordinary person wearing business attire were locked in this space, they would scream until their throat tore, smash their fists against the door until their bones shattered, and eventually collapse from exhaustion and utter despair. The extreme cold would erode their willpower, paralyze their central nervous system, and drag them into a hallucinatory sleep before death truly arrived. But I am not an ordinary person. I am Victoria Sterling. I clawed my way up from absolute poverty, trampling over countless hardships to build this empire. I would never allow myself to die at the hands of human garbage. I calmly unbuttoned and discarded the outer wool trench coat. Underneath was the Arctic-grade survival suit. I pulled a small tactical flashlight from my pocket and flicked it on. The powerful beam sliced through the icy fog, illuminating rows of towering pallets, stacked with frozen seafood reaching the ceiling. I walked swiftly toward the far back of the warehouse, where the massive industrial ventilation fans were housed. Exactly as I had instructed my elite tech crew that morning, the heavy steel security grate covering the exhaust vent had its welds sawed off, held loosely in place by 2 tiny screws. Hidden inside the duct, my team had stashed a heavy-duty, insulated Arctic survival parka, thermal gloves, and a solid carbon steel crowbar. I used my fingers to unscrew the loose bolts and pulled the grate down. The space inside the duct was pitch black, cramped, and reeked of machine oil. But to me, right now, it was the gateway to life and the gateway to the absolute destruction of the Hayes family. I quickly slipped on the heavy parka, pulled on the gloves, grabbed the crowbar, and hoisted myself into the duct. The freezing galvanized steel bit into my skin, but the raging fire of vengeance burning inside my chest incinerated any physical pain. I crawled inch by inch, my elbows and knees scraping painfully against the metal. I kept moving forward, toward the exhaust flap on the exterior rear wall of the facility. In my head, the voices of Preston, Martha, and that Mistress Jessica played on an endless, maddening loop. They wanted to split $50 million. They wanted to step over my corpse to throw a wedding. Did they really think God would tolerate such unchecked evil? There is no God tonight. Tonight, I am the Reaper, and I am here to judge their sins. After 15 minutes of agonizing, crawling through the suffocating dark, I finally reached the louvered exhaust vent on the rear exterior wall. My team had converted it into a mechanical hatch that could be popped from the inside. I pushed with all my might. The latch snapped open. A rush of warm, damp night air poured in, carrying the scent of wet grass and mud. I slid out, hung from the ledge, and dropped silently into the tall weeds behind the warehouse. I had escaped the ice tomb. I looked up at the pitch-black sky, taking a deep breath to fill my lungs with the warm air. The survival phase of the game was over. Now, the cornered beast was going on the hunt. I crouched in the shadows of the tall weeds, narrowing my eyes toward the far corner of the lot. Exactly as predicted, the company's small box truck was parked there, lights off, engine idling. Sitting in the cab, illuminated by the faint glow of her smartphone, I clearly saw Chloe's face, the sister-in-law I had supported for years. She was happily tapping away on her screen, a smug smile on her face. She was probably texting her friends, bragging about how her family was going to strike it rich tomorrow, how she was going to be a multi-millionaire socialite and never have to look at her strict sister-in-law's face again. She was assigned by her mother and brother to stand guard. She was ordered to wait until Preston locked the door and left, so he could establish an airtight alibi at a bar or hotel with cameras, and then remain here for another 2 hours to ensure no workers miraculously showed up. Only then was she allowed to leave. They split up to create perfect alibis. A very clever calculation, but a fatal mistake, because they had just left me the perfect hostage. Gripping the solid carbon steel crowbar, I moved step by step, silent as a ghost, gliding through the wet grass, closing in on the truck. Chloe was completely oblivious that the Grim Reaper was standing right behind her. She rolled down the window slightly to smoke a cigarette. The smell of cheap tobacco drifted out. I held my breath, moving to the driver's side door. With lightning speed, I swung the heavy crowbar and smashed it brutally into the driver's side window. The glass shattered, raining down into the cab. Chloe violently jumped, screaming in absolute terror, dropping her phone. Before she could even process what was happening, I reached through the shattered window, grabbed her perfectly styled hair, and yanked her head back violently. With my other hand, I ripped the door open and violently dragged the screaming, flailing girl out of the truck, throwing her onto the wet concrete. "Let go! Help! 911! Who are you? Get off me!" She squeezed her eyes shut, screaming hysterically, clawing wildly at the air. She thought she was being carjacked. I didn't say a word. I drove my knee hard into her back, pinning her to the wet pavement. I pressed the freezing cold steel of the crowbar directly against her throat. "Shut your mouth! You make one more sound, I'll crush your skull." Hearing my familiar, ice-cold voice, Chloe's entire body went completely rigid. She slowly turned her head, her eyes wide with unadulterated horror, as if looking at a demon summoned from hell. Her lips trembled violently. Victoria? Why? How are you out here?" Preston said. "Said you were dead in the freezer." I leaned down, whispering directly into her ear, my voice hissing through my teeth. "Your family calculated this so perfectly. But you forgot one detail. I built this empire with my bare hands. Every brick, every machine in this facility is controlled by me. Did you really think you could use my own property to bury me? Vic, please, spare me." "I didn't know." "My mom and Preston forced me to do it. Please spare me. I'm begging you." She started sobbing hysterically, snot and tears running down her face as she pleaded. The cowardly nature of a parasite instantly revealed itself in the face of death, but my heart was already frozen solid, colder than the -4 degrees Fahrenheit air inside that freezer. I stood up, grabbed her by the collar of her jacket, and dragged her forcefully toward the main door of the freezer. She thrashed and cried out pitifully, but the strength of a spoiled girl who did nothing but shop was no match for a woman who used to haul hundreds of pounds of frozen fish in her startup days. Reaching the massive steel door, I dropped her. She collapsed to her knees, hugging my legs. I pulled out my master override keycard and swiped the terminal. Beep. The heavy door slowly hissed open, blowing out thick, freezing white smoke that smelled of death. "Get up. Walk inside." I aimed the heavy crowbar directly at her face. "Vic, please." Thinking of Martha, the fire of hatred flared up again. I kicked Chloe hard in the ribs, sending her tumbling backward over the threshold and onto the frozen concrete floor inside. Your mother is currently sitting at home, celebrating because she thinks I am dead." You can just lie in there and wait for your dear mother to come rescue you. She carried you for 9 months. Let's see how she cries tomorrow when she receives a block of ice shaped exactly like her precious daughter. Before she could scramble back out, I put all my body weight into the massive steel door and shoved it shut. Slam. I violently threw the heavy external mechanical deadbolt. The steel locked into place with a dry, hollow echo, sealing the fate of the rat inside. Muffled thumping on the door and high-pitched, desperate screaming echoed faintly through the thick insulation. But in just a few minutes, all sound would cease. -4 degrees Fahrenheit does not allow life to linger. I walked over to the central control panel next to the door. They had disabled the primary alarm system that linked to my phone, but they didn't know I had a hidden, redundant secondary system. I punched in a master code, entirely disabling the emergency thermal sensors inside, and cut the power to the interior emergency release button. There was absolutely zero hope for the girl trapped inside that icebox. It was done. I tossed the crowbar into the weeds, stripped off the thermal survival suit, threw it into an old burn barrel in the corner of the lot, and set it on fire to destroy the evidence. I got into my SUV and started the engine. The car glided away into the silent night, leaving behind a frozen tomb and a crime that was slowly turning to ice. On the drive back to Seattle, I called Arthur Vance. Arthur, it's done. Chloe is in Freezer 3. Do you have all the digital evidence secured the plot by Preston and Martha, the dashcam audio, the logs of them disabling the primary alarms? Arthur's voice was steady and razor-sharp on the other end. Everything is secured, Vic. All audio, video, and system logs are fully encrypted and sitting safely on my private server. Early tomorrow morning, I'll use a burner phone to make an anonymous 911 call reporting cries for help at Freezer 3. Go to the safe house and get some sleep. Let the law handle the rest tomorrow. I hung up and smiled. A bitter, yet incredibly satisfying smile. I was going to sleep exceptionally well tonight. As for those currently dreaming of their $50 million payday, they should enjoy their final night of freedom. Because tomorrow, when the sun rose, their world was going to shatter into a million bloody pieces. The brutal sentence they wrote for me was about to be executed upon them. That night, I stayed awake in my secret downtown condo. Sitting on a plush leather sofa, swirling a glass of dark red wine, I stared unblinking at my laptop screen. It was broadcasting a live infrared feed from a hidden camera I had installed on a light pole outside Freezer Unit 3. I could see everything clearly in the dark. No one came. No sound escaped. The massive insulated door remained tightly shut, cold and merciless, exactly how the Hayes family had planned it for me. Inside, at -4 degrees Fahrenheit, the clock on their precious daughter's life was ticking down, with every weakening beat of her heart. At exactly 5:00 a.m., as the first gray light of dawn crept over the desolate Tacoma Industrial Park, I picked up the phone and called Arthur. Everything unfolded like a perfectly programmed machine. Arthur used a burner phone to call 911, utilizing a voice scrambler to anonymously report a suspected break-in and severe industrial accident at Sterling Cold Chain Logistics, Unit 3. The anonymous but hyper-specific tip ensured the police could not ignore it. By 6:00 a.m., the deafening wail of police sirens and ambulances ripped through the quiet suburban air. Through my screen, I watched 3 police cruisers screech to a halt in the massive loading dock. Officers jumped out and secured the perimeter. They inspected the company box truck with the shattered window, then moved directly toward the freezer door. At the exact same time, the listening devices planted in my Mercer Island living room began transmitting live audio. Martha had woken up early. She was pacing the hardwood floor, her slippers dragging with anxious excitement. She grabbed the house phone and dialed her precious son, who was undoubtedly sleeping next to his mistress in some hotel. "Preston, are you awake? Look at the time. The sun is up. Did everything go smoothly last night? Has Chloe called you? I've been calling that girl for an hour and it's going straight to voicemail. She probably fell asleep in the truck. Get dressed, go home, and pretend to call Vic. When she doesn't answer, we act panicked, like we're looking for her, and we drive straight to Unit 3. We have to be there before the morning crew arrives so we can put on a show for the cops. I'm awake, Mom. I'm awake." "Calm down. Why are you so frantic? Jess is still sleeping. Keep your voice down. I gave Chloe the truck keys last night and told her to stand guard for 3 hours, then bail. She probably crashed at a friend's place and her phone died. You know how she is. As for Vic, she's definitely a block of ice by now. Get ready, I'm driving over to pick you up right now. And Mom, remember to bring those eye drops. When they open the door and we see her body, put them in your eyes so the tears look real. We're about to be filthy rich, Mom. Yes, I know. I'm already dressed in dark clothes. Hurry up. I'm dying to see this multi-million-dollar empire finally belong to our family. Sitting in my condo, listening to this depraved conversation, my lips curled into a sneer of utter disgust. They were dreaming of a massive fortune, prepping to act out the perfect tragedy to fool the world. But they had no idea the tragedy was theirs, and their roles weren't the grieving heirs, but the ruthless murderers who had just killed their own blood. At exactly 7:00 a.m., Preston's Mercedes tore into the lot of Freezer Unit 3. Through the camera, I saw Martha's face go pale as she saw the yellow police tape blocking the loading dock. Preston slammed on the brakes. The two of them scrambled out of the car in a panic. The performance began. Martha ran toward a police officer holding a clipboard, waving her arms and wailing theatrically. "Officers, what happened? Why is our warehouse cordoned off? Where is my daughter-in-law? She came down here last night to check the inventory and never came home. She's the CEO. Oh my God, did she have an accident in there? Vic, honey." "Officers, I am her husband, the vice president of this company." Preston chimed in, his voice shaking with fake terror. "My wife came down here last night. I've been calling her all night. No answer. I had a terrible feeling, so I brought my mother here. Please, you have to open the door. If something happened to her, I don't know how I'll survive." The police sergeant looked at them with a piercing gaze, then sternly ordered them to calm down. He explained that a 911 caller reported an emergency. The external deadbolt was locked from the outside, and the fire department rescue team was currently bringing out heavy saws to cut the mechanical latch. Hearing the words "locked from the outside," I saw Preston's shoulders violently flinch, but he quickly lowered his head to hide his panic. He assumed everything was still going according to plan, that the locked door would be deemed an accident caused by a negligent worker. The deafening screech of a rotary saw ripping through metal shattered the morning air. Sparks flew everywhere as the firefighters sliced through the heavy steel deadbolt. Martha's and Preston's hearts must have been pounding out of their chests with pure joy. They were waiting for the door to open, waiting to see my stiff corpse on the concrete floor, waiting to cry, scream, and officially inherit their massive fortune. Finally, the lock snapped. 4 firefighters grabbed the heavy handle and pulled. With a deep, groaning rumble, the door swung open. The -4 degrees Fahrenheit pressurized air that had been trapped all night violently rushed out, billowing into the morning air like a thick, white, blinding fog, hitting the officers and the family square in the face. The temperature instantly dropped. As the fog slowly dissipated, the interior of the freezer was revealed. The powerful beams of police flashlights cut through the gloom, shining directly onto the floor just inside the threshold. And there, it was not my body. It was a small, fragile figure, wearing a thin designer jacket, curled into a fetal position on the frost-covered concrete. The girl's skin had turned a horrific, bruised purplish gray. Her perfectly styled hair was frozen solid, the strands clumped together like icy needles. Her eyes were wide open, bulging, forever paralyzed in a state of unadulterated terror and absolute despair before the cold ripped away her final breath. Her hands were bloodied. Her expensive manicured nails were shattered and torn off from frantically, hopelessly clawing at the insulated steel door. It was an ice statue shaped in the most gruesome form of death. Martha stood frozen to the asphalt. Her eyes widened so far they looked like they would pop out of her skull. She couldn't believe what she was looking at. She blinked rapidly, rubbing her eyes, thinking it was a hallucination caused by the freezing fog. But no, the small butterfly tattoo on the wrist, the familiar diamond C pendant necklace lying still against that frozen neck. There was no mistaking it. Chloe. Chloe? No, it can't be. Why is it Chloe? Why is it you, baby? Martha's scream shredded the eardrums of everyone at the scene. It was not the fake, rehearsed wail she had prepared. It was the primal, harrowing screech of a wild animal having its heart ripped out. It was mournful, horrified, and utterly psychotic. She collapsed onto the freezing wet pavement, tearing at her own hair, trying to crawl toward the open freezer door. But her precious daughter lay there, eternally motionless, never to open her mouth and beg her mother for money ever again. This dawn was the most brutal, hellish hour the Hayes family would ever face. I sat in my heavily tinted, armored black Maybach parked quietly in a blind spot not far from the scene. The dark windows completely shielded me from view. I cracked the window just enough to clearly hear the chaotic sounds echoing across the loading dock. The stench of death seemed to slither through the air, mixing with the scent of lies and ultimate karma. Martha was crawling on the asphalt, her knees scraping against the rough concrete, bleeding. She lunged forward to embrace Chloe's frozen corpse but was immediately restrained by two police officers preserving the crime scene. She thrashed and screamed like a madwoman, her eyes bloodshot and bulging. "Let me go! Let me hold my baby! Chloe, wake up! Why are you in there? It was supposed to be Vic. I told you to stand guard outside. Who locked my baby in there? Who killed my daughter? Oh God, pay for my daughter's life." In her absolute, mind-shattering panic, Martha's logic completely imploded. Her frantic, hysterical babbling echoed loud and clear, surrounded by law enforcement. It was supposed to be Vic. I told you to stand guard outside. Every word, every syllable was an ironclad confession, personally stripping bare the murderous conspiracy she had so carefully orchestrated. The veteran homicide detectives at the scene instantly furrowed their brows. They exchanged razor-sharp glances. Their notepads were suddenly out, pens flying. "Mom, shut your mouth! What kind of crazy nonsense are you spouting?" Preston lunged forward in absolute terror, trying to physically cover his mother's mouth. His face was ghostly white, sweat pouring down his face despite the freezing air rolling out of the warehouse. He realized the lethal danger of his mother's psychotic rambling. He turned to the police, forcing a grotesquely twisted smile, stammering, "Officers, please understand. My mother is in extreme shock. She's delirious. My sister must have followed my wife down here, went inside to check the inventory, and the door must have accidentally jammed. My mother is old. Seeing her daughter dead has broken her mind. Don't listen to Hare." The lead homicide detective stepped forward, his eyes cutting into Preston like a knife, before looking down at Martha thrashing on the ground. He spoke in a cold, authoritative voice. "We will conduct a full investigation into the cause of death. However, based on our initial observation, the exterior deadbolt was engaged mechanically from the outside with significant force. This was not a simple mechanical failure. Furthermore, the company box truck parked in the rear has a smashed window, indicating a struggle and possible abduction. I am ordering you and your mother to remain at the scene. You are not permitted to leave." The detective's statement fell like a sledgehammer onto their heads. When Martha heard the words engaged mechanically from the outside, her eyes glazed over. Her body convulsed violently. The final shred of logic in a murderer's brain connected the dots. She remembered the plan from last night. She was the one who told Preston to lure me in, pull the door shut, and throw the heavy deadbolt. And why was the daughter who was supposed to be standing guard locked inside? Why was there a struggle at the truck? A horrifying realization ripped through her mind. There was no one else. The only person who could have locked Chloe in there was Preston. Because it was dark, because he was rushing, or because of some catastrophic, fatal mistake. She didn't know I survived. She didn't know I put Chloe in there. In her narrow, psychotic mind, only one theory existed. Her son had personally murdered his own sister. You animal! It was you! Martha suddenly shrieked, launching herself at Preston with the unimaginable strength of a madwoman. She clawed at his face, slapping him repeatedly, screaming until her vocal cords tore. "You locked the door, didn't you? I told you to lock Vic in there. Why did you lock your sister in? Are you blind? You killed your sister. Give me back my daughter. Give her back. I gave birth to you so you could murder your sister? Oh God. Karma. This is karma. Mom, you're insane." "I didn't. I locked Vic in there." When I shut the door, I heard Vic scream, "Stop making things up. Officers, my mother has completely lost her mind." Absolute terror made Preston lose complete control. He violently shoved his mother away. Martha flew backward, her head cracking brutally against the hard concrete. In a moment of life-or-death panic, terrified of a murder charge, his cowardice pushed him to verbally admit to locking someone in the freezer in front of dozens of witnesses and police officers. Officers immediately swarmed Preston, twisting his arms behind his back and slapping handcuffs on his wrists. Two female officers approached to detain Martha. But the punishment of the law no longer mattered to this woman. The ultimate, most brutal sentence had already been carried out inside her own mind. Martha lay flat on the cold asphalt, her graying hair tangled in dirt and blood from the gash on her head. She stared blankly up at the gray sky, her eyes entirely hollow, entirely dead. She mumbled incomprehensible words, a chilling, psychotic giggle mixing with choked sobs. She realized that her own bottomless greed, her own sinister plot to steal $50 million from a phantom heiress, had directly sent her darling daughter to hell. She dug a grave for her daughter-in-law, but the one lying in it was her own flesh and blood. The crushing guilt, the agonizing pain, and the sheer terror of her impending punishment eradicated any will to live. Suddenly, Martha's body convulsed violently. She clamped her jaw shut with unimaginable, terrifying force. A sickening crunch echoed. Bright red arterial blood spewed from the corners of her mouth, pouring down her chin, staining her shirt crimson. "Mom, what are you doing? Medic, medic! Help my mother!" Preston screamed like a wounded animal as he watched. Officers and paramedics rushed over, desperately trying to pry Martha's jaw open. But it was too late. She had bitten completely through her own tongue using the final, explosive strength of absolute despair. The bite was so deep it severed the lingual artery. Blood poured down her throat, flooding her trachea, causing immediate acute asphyxiation. Her eyes rolled back into her head. Her body jerked a few weak times before going completely, permanently limp, right next to the puddle of melting ice dripping from her daughter's frozen corpse. Instant karma. She didn't need to wait for the next life. She didn't even need to wait for a judge. The woman who sowed the seeds of ultimate cruelty had ended her own life in the most excruciating, horrific way possible. I sat in my car, coldly watching the final act of this tragedy conclude. My heart didn't feel a single ounce of pity. Those without humanity do not deserve mercy. I slowly rolled up the tinted window and signaled my driver to pull away from the blood-soaked crime scene. The game wasn't entirely over. There was still one cowardly rat waiting for me. My black Maybach glided smoothly down the I-5 freeway, heading straight back to Mercer Island. The morning sky over Seattle was unusually clear, as if last night's rain had washed away all the filth and scum of the city. I leaned back into the plush leather seat, taking a sip of hot coffee, feeling incredibly, completely invigorated. Preston was hauled off to the Seattle Police Department headquarters straight from the warehouse. His mother dead, his sister frozen solid, and himself facing charges of first-degree premeditated murder. But that wasn't enough to satisfy me. I wanted him to taste absolute, bottomless despair. I wanted him to see with his own eyes that the $50 million fantasy he sold his soul for was nothing but a soap bubble. I wanted him to kneel at my feet and receive his final humiliation. Through Arthur Vance's connections, acting as his legal spouse and the CEO of the company, I requested the detectives allow me to meet with Preston in the interrogation room to clarify corporate asset issues before a total asset freeze. In reality, this was the final privilege my money and power bought me, the ability to deliver the lethal psychological strike to the traitor. That afternoon, I walked into the SPD interrogation wing with Arthur. The room was freezing, smelling of stale sweat and institutional bleach. The heavy metal door opened, and Preston was escorted in by two detectives. He was wearing an oversized Orange County Jail jumpsuit, his hands locked in heavy cuffs. Barely 12 hours had passed, but the handsome, dapper vice president was gone. In his place was a hollowed-out, emaciated shell with heavy, terrified bags under his eyes. The moment he saw me sitting calmly at the table, legs crossed, perfectly applied makeup, and bold red lipstick, Preston froze as if he were looking at a ghost. His legs gave out. He stumbled backward, his entire body shaking violently. He couldn't comprehend why I was sitting there, alive and breathing, without a single scratch on me. Just last night, he had personally locked that freezer door. Vic? Vic? Are you human or a ghost? Why? Why are you here? Last night, I smiled, a radiant, razor-sharp smile. I stood up gracefully, walking toward the metal table dividing us. You definitely locked the freezer door, intending to turn me into an ice block, right? Are you surprised? My wonderful husband. What a shame. That stupid plan you and your mother hatched in your office? I heard every single word of it. Did you really think Victoria Sterling would blindly walk into a cheap trap set by you parasites? You knew everything? Then Chloe. Preston stuttered, his eyes bulging. It seemed he was finally realizing a truth far more horrifying than me being alive. Exactly. The person locked in the freezer last night wasn't me. It was your precious sister. I escaped through the ventilation duct that I had my crew secretly cut open earlier that day. When I got outside, I saw Chloe sitting in the truck playing on her phone, acting as the lookout for my murder. So, I dragged her out, tossed her into the freezer, and shut the door. You locked the door. You are the murderer. I just came back from a canceled business trip and slept beautifully in my luxury condo. I tilted my head, looking directly into his dilated, terrified eyes, emphasizing every syllable. How does it feel to personally murder your own sister, Preston? How does it feel to watch your mother bite her own tongue and bleed to death because she couldn't handle the shock of her own greed? Does it hurt? That is the return gift I prepared for your family's betrayal. No, you are a demon. You're a venomous snake. You killed my mother. You killed my sister. I'll kill you. Preston shrieked psychotically, lunging across the table to strangle me. But the cuffs and the two detectives immediately slammed him face first into the metal table. His cheek pressed against the cold steel, tears and spit pouring from his mouth, looking utterly pathetic and infinitely humiliating. A demon? Who is the real demon here? The parasite who leeched off his wife, used her money to fund his mistress, and plotted to murder her to steal her company that is the demon. Go ahead, scream. Because the worst is yet to come. I lifted my chin, gesturing to Arthur. Arthur opened his leather briefcase, pulled out a massive stack of documents, and dropped them heavily onto the table right in front of Preston's face. Look closely, Mr. Vice President. You thought you'd just inherit a multi-million-dollar logistics empire upon my death? You're an idiot. 3 days ago, I signed over every single fixed asset, every piece of machinery, and all the real estate leases of those 15 warehouses to an offshore holding company. Sterling Cold Chain Logistics is currently a hollow shell, carrying $1.5 million in bank debt due next week. I watched Preston's pupils constrict. This blow hit him harder than the deaths of his mother and sister. The money, the only thing that made him trade his humanity, was now nothing but a pile of worthless paper. You tricked me. You drained the company? He gasped. Impossible. What about Jessica's $50 million? She said she was bringing $50 million to start our new company. Where is Jess? She'll bail me out. I'll have her lawyers sue you for framing me. Hearing him mention Jessica, I laughed out loud. The bright, mocking laughter echoed off the concrete walls of the interrogation room. I reached into my designer bag, pulled out another stack of files, and threw them directly at his face. Glossy photos and background reports scattered across the table. $50 million? Your heiress is Jessica? Open your dog eyes and look at this, Preston. This is the dossier my private investigators compiled. The Jessica you worship? Her real name is Crystal Lawson. She's from a trailer park in rural Oregon. She has no offshore trust. She is a professional con artist with 2 felony fraud convictions for posing as a wealthy socialite to bleed greedy, pathetic men like you dry. I pointed at a photo of Jessica sitting in a dive bar with a heavily tattooed biker. That baby bump? Also fake. The second you were hauled off in handcuffs this morning, she packed up every piece of jewelry and designer bag you bought her with my credit card and bolted with her biker boyfriend. You think she's coming to bail you out with $50 million? Keep dreaming until your next life. You lost everything, Preston. You lost your family, you lost your money, and now you are going to lose your freedom. No, it's impossible. Jess wouldn't con me. You're lying. You're setting me up. Mom, Chloe, I'm sorry. Preston collapsed against the table, sobbing hysterically like a child who had his toys stolen. There was no true remorse in his cries, only the bitter, humiliating agony of a loser stripped of all his delusions. He sold his soul, gambled his wife's life, and murdered his own family, all for a spectacular con pulled by a cheap grifter. I stood up coldly, smoothing my skirt, refusing to offer a single word of pity for the worm writhing beneath me. I turned to Arthur and nodded. Let's go, Arthur. The air in here is rancid. It makes me sick. Let the courts handle the rest. I want him given the maximum sentence so he can spend the rest of his miserable life rotting in a cell, chewing on the price of his betrayal. I turned on my heel and walked out of the interrogation room. Behind me, Preston's psychotic wailing echoed down the hall. The darkness of the penal system would swallow that pathetic excuse for a man forever. As for me, I stepped out into the Seattle sunlight. my head held high, ready for the rebirth of a much brighter empire, utterly free of toxic parasites. But the game wasn't completely over. Even though I threw the dossier in Preston's face to let him taste the agony of betrayal, it wasn't enough for me. A homewrecker who dared to pose as an heiress to drain my money, who manipulated my husband into attempting murder to steal my throne. I wasn't going to let her run off into the sunset. I am Victoria Sterling. I fought my way up from nothing. I never let anyone touch what is mine and walk away breathing. Right after leaving the police precinct, my phone rang. It was the lead investigator of my PI team. He reported that Jessica, Crystal, and her biker boyfriend were hiding out in a sleazy motel near Blaine, Washington, right on the Canadian border, preparing to cross into British Columbia. They had all the jewelry, luxury watches, and Birkin bags Preston had bought her using my corporate Amex. They thought they could just cross the border and vanish. But they forgot that the diamond-encrusted Rolex Preston bought her contained a micro-GPS tracker designed for global warranty tracking of ultra-luxury goods. I handed the tracking codes straight to the authorities. That night, a SWAT team raided the motel, dragging the cheating couple out in handcuffs just as they were counting their stolen loot. They were transported back to Seattle overnight for questioning. The next morning, I had Arthur arrange a face-to-face confrontation between Preston, Jessica, and me at the precinct. I wanted to personally rip the mask off her face right in front of my cowardly husband. The interrogation room was brightly lit. Preston was brought in first, looking like a zombie. A few minutes later, the door opened, and Jessica was escorted in by 2 female officers. She looked nothing like the glamorous socialite from the Bravern. She was wearing wrinkled sweatpants, her hair a greasy mess, her makeup completely wiped off to reveal pale skin, acne scars, and the cheap, grimy aura of a street hustler. The pregnant belly was completely gone, as flat as if it had never existed. Jess! Why? Why did you do this to me? Where is our baby? Where's your $50 million? Why did you run away with that biker? Preston screamed, lunging at her like a starving dog, but the handcuffs chained to the desk held him back. Tears streamed down his filthy face. He still clung to a microscopic shred of hope that she was forced, that the baby was real. Are you an idiot? Jessica spat back. Look at the situation, you spineless moocher. What baby? The silicone bump cost me $30 on Amazon. You touched it and you couldn't tell? What kind of moron is so easily blinded by a few sweet words and a fake $50 million story? You thought I actually loved you? If you didn't have your wife's credit card, why the hell would I call you husband? You lied to me. You told me you were a trust fund baby. Because of you, I listened to my mother. I locked the freezer to kill Vic. Because of you, my mother is dead. My sister froze to death. You owe my family your life, you bitch. I lied to you? Did I hold a knife to your throat and force you to murder your wife? Did I tell your mother to bite her tongue off? That's your family's own twisted, greedy DNA. You wanted to steal your wife's money. You face the consequences. I just took a few bags and watches. You are the murderer. Leave me out of this. Don't drag me into your filthy mess. Jessica cursed him out, the most vulgar, gutter trash insult spewing from the mouth that used to whisper sweet, aristocratic nothings. Every word was a sledgehammer smashing into Preston's empty skull. His jaw dropped, his body convulsed. Out of pure resentment, he sold his soul, betrayed the wife who sheltered him for 10 years, murdered his sister, and drove his mother to suicide, all for a pile of worthless corporate debt and a cheap, trailer park con artist. I crossed my arms, walking slowly to the center of the room, looking down at the 2 rats tearing each other apart with absolute disgust and pity. What a wonderful play. But Miss Lawson, don't think you can just deny involvement and walk away. You think this was just a simple romance scam? The jewelry and bags you tried to fence are valued at over $250,000. That is felony grand larceny. Furthermore, the detectives recovered text messages of you inciting and pressuring Preston to murder me for the assets. You are a co-conspirator in first-degree premeditated murder. You're looking at no less than 20 years. Enjoy your prime years in a federal cell. No, Vic, I beg you. I just wanted the money. I didn't want anyone dead. It was his mother's idea to lock you in the freezer. Please spare me. I'll give everything back. Please. Jessica panicked, dropping to the linoleum floor, slamming her head down in a desperate plea. snot and tears smearing her face. As for Preston, he collapsed onto the desk, howling in sheer agony and utterly belated remorse. He had lost everything. No way out, no escape, no one left by his side. I turned on my heel, the sharp click-clack of my stilettos echoing proudly down the precinct hallway. The putrid air behind me didn't matter anymore. The fake heiress had been exposed, and the price for greed had been set. Now, it was time to unleash the final legal strike to lock the prison doors and bury my traitorous husband forever. Following the confrontation that stripped away his mistress's mask, Preston's psyche completely shattered. However, a coward always retains the survival instinct to deny everything until the bitter end. During interrogations, his court-appointed public defender clung to a pathetic defense. Preston had no intention of killing me. He accidentally locked the wrong door, resulting in the tragic involuntary manslaughter of his sister, Chloe. He was trying to reduce a premeditated murder charge to involuntary manslaughter to save himself from a life sentence. He thought that since his mother was dead, he could pin the entire mastermind role on her. But they didn't know that Victoria Sterling never fought a battle she wasn't 100% guaranteed to win. During the months of playing the oblivious wife, I had woven an inescapable steel net, and now, it was time to pull it tight. The next morning, Arthur and I arrived at the King County Prosecutor's office, carrying a briefcase containing the absolute truth. The room was quiet. Hardened prosecutors sat across from me. I opened the briefcase, pulling out an encrypted hard drive and a thick stack of files. Ladies and gentlemen, I know the defendant, Preston Hayes, is trying to claim this was a tragic accident, but the evidence I brought today will prove his actions were meticulously calculated, highly premeditated, and executed with the utmost malice. I plugged the drive into the laptop. The first audio file played. It was the recording from Preston's home office the night I returned early. The audio was crystal clear. Martha explaining exactly how to lock the -4 degrees Fahrenheit freezer door to kill me without a trace, and Preston's cold-blooded agreement. Next, I played the video pulled from the hidden dashcam in his Mercedes. It showed Preston driving, laughing on the phone with Jessica, bragging about how he was going to lure me to Unit 3, lock the door, get my death certificate, and walk away with $50 million. But that wasn't all. I slammed the financial forensic audit reports onto the table. This isn't just a homicide case, prosecutors. It's a massive corporate fraud case. Preston didn't just want my life. Over the past year, abusing the vice president title I gave him, he colluded with a rogue accountant to forge invoices and inflate the cost of imported seafood, embezzling over $1.2 million in corporate funds. That money was funneled into his personal brokerage accounts and used to buy luxury cars and designer goods for his mistress. Arthur stood next to me, speaking with professional, lethal precision. Prosecutors, with this physical evidence, audio, video, and forensic accounting, we formally request the charges against Preston Hayes be upgraded. Not only first-degree murder with special circumstances murder for financial gain, but also felony embezzlement and wire fraud. Additionally, Crystal Lawson's role as a co-conspirator in the financial crimes and murder plot must be fully prosecuted. The prosecutors stared at the evidence spread across the table, sheer astonishment in their eyes at my level of preparation. Ironclad proof. No loopholes. Preston's lie about an accident was entirely pulverized by his own voice, his own face, and his own illicit paper trail. That afternoon, when detectives threw this evidence on the table in front of Preston, the legal noose snapped tight. He stopped screaming. He stopped crying. He slumped into his chair, holding his head, his dead eyes staring at the bank statements and listening to his own cruel voice on the tape. He knew every door was shut. No miracle, no mercy could save him from the brutal sentence he had written for himself. I didn't just take his assets, his reputation, and his mistress. I took away his right to hope. Now he just had to wait for the guillotine. 6 months after the horrific night at Freezer Unit 3, the blockbuster trial dubbed the Cold Storage Murder Conspiracy officially commenced at the King County Superior Court in Seattle. The case captured national media attention, not just because of the gruesome method of murder, but because of the sheer depravity and catastrophic downfall of a family blinded by greed. It was a cold winter morning. The wind coming off Puget Sound was biting, but that chill was nothing compared to the ice in the souls of the defendants standing before the judge. I stepped out of my black Maybach, draped in a charcoal gray wool trench coat, walking calmly and proudly up the courthouse steps. Dozens of camera flashes went off, but I didn't flinch. I was here to watch justice be served and to close the bloody novel the Hayes family had written into my life. Inside the massive courtroom, the air was suffocatingly tense. I sat in the front row reserved for victims, Arthur by my side. Across the room, standing at the defense table, were Preston and Jessica. In 10 years of marriage, I had never seen Preston look so pathetic and filthy. The oversized jail uniform hung off a skeletal frame. His hair was graying and patchy, his eyes sunken, hollow, and filled with terror. He didn't dare look at me, staring blankly at the wooden table. Beside him, Jessica looked equally ruined. Jail had scrubbed away the fake heiress, leaving only the trembling shell of a con artist. The judge banged the gavel, the sharp crack echoing through the room. The district attorney loudly read the multi-page indictment. Every sin was laid bare under the light of justice. The plot to murder for inheritance, locking the sister in the freezer. The mother's suicide via arterial shock. The embezzlement of over $1 million. Defendant Preston Hayes. How do you plead to the charges read in the indictment? Your Honor, I plead guilty. I was wrong. I beg the court, I beg Vic, to show mercy. Give me a chance to start over. I was manipulated by my mother. I was scammed by Jessica. I didn't mean to kill my sister. Preston stammered, sobbing, begging, throwing out every excuse to dodge responsibility. He was using his dead mother and frozen sister as human shields to protect his own cowardice. His pathetic defense only made everyone in the courtroom despise him more. When it was time for the victim impact statement, I stood up. Composed, elegant, my cold, unwavering voice projecting across the courtroom. Your Honor, I have no requests for leniency for the monsters standing in this room. They did not act out of sudden passion. They calculated every step. They chose the coldest, most agonizing place to end my life. The fact that the defendant's sister died in my place, and his mother took her own life, is nothing but karma destiny's punishment for their bottomless greed. I ask the court to apply the absolute maximum sentence allowed by law, to set a precedent, so that no woman ever has to face a deadly trap inside her own home. After hours of intense proceedings, the jury deliberated. When the judge returned, the courtroom held its breath. Based on the overwhelming evidence and testimony, this court finds the defendant's actions to be exceptionally heinous, cruel, and devoid of human empathy, resulting in catastrophic loss of life and massive financial theft. Crystal Lawson, 18 years in federal prison for grand larceny, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. Preston Hayes, for the crimes of first-degree murder with special circumstances and felony embezzlement. The defendant showed zero remorse and attempted to blame the deceased. The sentence is life in prison without the possibility of parole. Furthermore, the defendant is ordered to pay full restitution of the embezzled funds to Sterling Cold Chain Logistics. Life without parole. The sentence struck like a thunderbolt, obliterating Preston's final gasping breath of hope. He collapsed on the spot, his legs giving out completely, requiring 2 bailiffs to drag him to his feet. He screamed my name in utter desperation, begging for forgiveness, but it was too late. I looked at him one last time. I didn't blink. I didn't shed a tear. There was only the absolute tranquility of a soul that had walked out of the darkness. The heavy doors of the Department of Corrections transport van slammed shut, permanently locking that wretched man in eternal darkness. Outside, the Seattle sky suddenly broke through the clouds. Golden winter sunlight pierced through the trees in front of the courthouse, chasing away the bitter chill. I walked out the grand doors, took a deep breath of fresh air, and felt my chest feel incredibly light. A dark chapter full of lies, betrayal, and blood had officially closed behind those iron doors. Arthur walked up beside me, patting my shoulder, offering a warm smile. It's over, Vic. You did incredible. You were so strong. From this moment on, no one can ever hurt you again. Thank you, Arthur. If it wasn't for your intellect and loyalty, I would be lying 6 feet under the frozen ground right now. I looked back at the courthouse one last time, then confidently stepped into my waiting car. 3 years passed since that fateful trial. My life became a masterpiece painted with the most vibrant colors. The pain and betrayal of the past didn't break me. They were the fire that forged me. Victoria Sterling became a woman of immense power, iron-willed, but full of grace and pride. Sterling Cold Chain Logistics, After a massive restructuring and an influx of clean capital, tripled in size. I expanded operations into Europe and Asia, becoming the undisputed queen of the global frozen logistics industry. The Mercer Island estate, the house holding the horrific memories of Martha and Chloe, was bulldozed to the ground. In its place, I built a state-of-the-art sanctuary and resource center for women and children surviving domestic violence. I wanted the place that was almost my personal hell to become a beacon of light for other vulnerable women. As for Freezer Unit 3 down in Tacoma, I didn't demolish it. I upgraded it to become the most advanced, automated deep freeze facility on the West Coast. Every time I do an inspection, stepping through that massive steel door, feeling the -4 degrees Fahrenheit air hit my face, I no longer feel fear. I look at it as a monument to survival, a testament that you should never, ever push a woman into a corner. Because when you shove her into the dark, she will set herself on fire to burn everything standing in her way. On a bright May afternoon, with a gentle breeze blowing through my hair, I stood on the balcony of my corporate headquarters, holding a glass of vintage champagne, looking out over the Seattle skyline. Life is gentle, but that gentleness is not meant for the weak or the submissive. A woman's true gentleness must be fiercely protected by her talent, her financial independence, and a mind as cold as ice. There is no eternal love if it is built on exploitation. There is no home if it is overflowing with greed. I used to believe, I used to sacrifice, and I almost died for those illusions. But today, Victoria Sterling doesn't need to lean on anyone's shoulder. I am the absolute queen of the empire I built. The villains have turned to dust, and I am reborn, in the most spectacular way possible, raising my glass to life, to justice, and to women who refuse to ever bow their heads. Dear listeners, as the final chapters of the lives of these evildoers slam shut behind heavy prison doors, a true, peaceful silence has been restored to this space. Now, sitting alone in a breezy high-rise, looking out at the glittering city lights, the furious rage and the vindictive triumph in my heart have faded. Everything has settled, giving way to an absolute, profound clarity in my soul. Surviving a near-death experience, walking out of that -4 degrees Fahrenheit ice tomb that cut through flesh and bone, I realized that the coldest thing in this world isn't ice or snow, it is the human heart. 10 years of my youth, 10 years traded for blood, sweat, and boundless forgiveness. I naively believed that sincerity could melt selfishness, that the silent sacrifices of a wife and daughter-in-law could build a peaceful harbor. I gave them the absolute best of everything, rolled out a velvet red carpet for them to walk on, only to receive a death sentence forged in the fires of their bottomless greed. But you know, when standing on the razor's edge between life and death, when your breath is about to crystallize into shattered ice, the strongest, most primal version of myself awakened. I realized that my previous weakness and blind tolerance was the exact fertile soil that allowed their cruelty to blossom. I let go. Letting go doesn't mean forgiving their unforgivable, horrific crimes. It means letting go of the expectation that soulless people possess hearts. I shed the shell of a submissive woman to be reborn as a thorny, sharp, and ruthless Victoria when facing pure evil. Because there are monsters in this world who, if you take a step back, will lunge forward to take your life. You cannot treat a pack of starving wolves with kindness. You can only become the most lethal hunter to save your own life. Looking back on this journey of blood and tears, I've realized profound life lessons that I believe everyone, especially women, should etch into their bones. The greatest lesson, and the strongest life preserver for any woman, is independence. Financial independence, intellectual independence, and emotional independence. In our modern society, love and marriage are a partnership, a sharing of life, not a dependency or a gamble where you place your entire fate into someone else's hands. Never lose your career or abandon your autonomy just because you love someone. Because when the storms of life hit, when people show their true, dark colors, the only thing that will never betray you, the only thing that will protect you from being trampled, is your own capability and the money you make with your own two hands. I survived that freezer and crushed the sinister plot of my husband and his mother. Not because of a miracle. I won because I held absolute financial power. I understood the law, and I had a mind cold enough to orchestrate an airtight defense. Women, remember this. Gentleness only holds true value when it is built on a foundation of strength and courage. Love deeply, sacrifice for your family, but absolutely must keep an escape route for yourself, a master key to open the exit door when your loving home suddenly turns into a dark prison. Furthermore, this story is a profound alarm bell regarding greed and the law of karma. Human greed is a bottomless pit. The more you feed it, the more it expands until it swallows your humanity whole. Martha and Preston, blinded by a phantom $50 million from a cheap con artist, willingly threw away 10 years of marriage and violated every moral law to murder me. But the net of justice is wide, and karma never misses a single target. And sometimes, it strikes so fast you don't even have time to react. The price they paid was exorbitant and catastrophic. A mother personally sent her own daughter to her death and bit off her own tongue in a fit of psychotic despair. A husband earned a life sentence, losing his entire empire, his dignity, and his future. They dug their own graves long before the law even touched them. This reminds us of a simple yet profound truth. In this life, whatever you scheme, steal, or cheat to get, if it doesn't come from your own sweat and hard work, it will eventually slip through your fingers, leaving you with nothing but humiliation and severe karmic retribution. Cherish what you have. Build wealth through true talent and kindness. Because only virtue and transparency can grant you a peaceful night's sleep. Additionally, this story teaches us about setting boundaries in relationships. Do not confuse family loyalty and filial piety with allowing others to exploit and manipulate your life. I made a mistake when I tolerated the lazy, parasitic behavior of my sister-in-law and the arrogant, unreasonable demands of my mother-in-law, just to keep the peace. That exact leniency and lack of boundaries provided the ladder for their evil to climb. We must learn to say no. We must learn to fight back when our moral limits and rightful interests are violated. Submission does not bring peace. It only stimulates the cruelty of bullies. Have the courage to sever toxic relationships, even if they share your bed or your blood. Toxic is toxic. Trash needs to be taken out to protect the sanctity of your own life. Victoria's journey from a hardworking, enduring, somewhat blindly devoted wife to a cold, sharp titan who personally shoved her enemies into hell and threw them in prison is an agonizing but worthy metamorphosis. I had to smash my old, fragile ego to rebuild a new woman from the ashes of betrayal. The shock of being locked in a negative 4 degrees Fahrenheit freezer didn't kill me. It was the spark that incinerated my final drop of naivety and forged a spirit of pure steel. Standing at the pinnacle of my career today, with an international business empire and a sanctuary for abused women built directly over the ruins of my old life, I understand that stumbling isn't scary. Being betrayed or hurt isn't the end of the world. The only truly terrifying thing is accepting defeat and letting the monsters gleefully steal your right to a happy life. Every pain you endure is an expensive lesson. Every tear that falls pays for a step up the ladder of maturity. We women carry within us a vitality as fierce as wild weeds. No matter how deeply we are buried under freezing ice and snow, as long as there is a single ray of sunlight from logic and courage, we will absolutely push through the earth, sprout, and bloom more brilliantly than ever before. Dear listeners, the sounds of life are sometimes gentle melodies, but other times they are dramatic, stormy crescendos. Through Victoria's story, we hope you, especially the women listening, have found empathy, profound warnings, and above all, a powerful inspiration to take control of your own lives. No one can love you more than you love yourself, and no one can protect you better than your own capabilities. Never stop seeking knowledge, secure your financial independence, keep a warm heart to love, but maintain a deeply cold mind to see through the illusions of this world. As we close this turbulent journey and brilliant revenge, what emotions linger with you right now? Is Victoria's cold calculation an inevitable cruelty, or the ultimate survival instinct of a woman pushed to the absolute brink? Did the karma that crashed down on the Hayes family soothe the outrage in your heart? Please share your thoughts, your perspectives, and your own stories in the comments below. Every comment is the most wonderful connection you can make with us. If this story touched your heart, and if you love content that is healing, yet fiercely empowering and deep, please don't hesitate to hit the like button to spread the message. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so we can continue to journey together through more captivating stories of the human experience. Your support is the warmest fire that fuels the passion of our production team. The night is late. The street lights are casting a soft golden glow over the city as the rhythm of life slowly fades into silence. We wish you, our dear friends, peace in your souls, steadfastness in your minds, and a life forever filled with the light of kindness and independence. Live like a flower even if the storm knocks you down, rise up proudly, bloom, and let your fragrance fill the air. Goodbye for now, and we will see you in the next video.